The rain in Seattle never really stopped anymore. It just changed flavors. Tonight, it tasted like ozone and cheap soy whiskey. Jonas Hale leaned back in his chair, boots on the desk, watching a cracked hollow-screen cycle through case files he couldn't afford to ignore, and clients he couldn't afford to trust. Human, male, private investigator, which meant he was the guy people called when they wanted answers but didn't want the truth attached to their name. Hale looked like a man who'd been losing small battles for a long time and learned how to call it experience. Mid-30s, maybe. Hard to tell under the stubble and the kind of tired that didn't sleep off. His coat had seen better decades. Collar always turned up like it was trying to hide him from the world, or the other way around. His eyes were sharp, though, not hopeful, just observant. The kind that noticed exits, lies, and who was about to reach for a weapon before they did it. There was nothing remarkable about him at first glance, which was exactly how he liked it. In a city where everything screamed for attention, chrome, magic, power, Jonas Hale survived by being the man you forgot was still in the room until it was too late to matter. Somewhere down the hall, a troll landlord argued with a tenant about late payments. Down on the street, a spirit drifted between light poles, barely visible unless you knew to look. Magic and misery sharing the same zip code. The door buzzed. He didn't move. "It's open if you're paying." It slid aside anyway. She stepped in like she owned the air. Clean lines, corporate tailoring, chrome data jack gleaming at her temple. Not local street chrome. Precision work. Expensive. "Mr. Hale," she said. "I represent Helix Biodyne." Jonas reflexively checked his sin when she walked in. You could never be too careful when the suits were in the room. "Then you can represent a retainer." His comlink pinged. Enough new yen to make bad decisions feel like good ones. He lowered his boots. "Missing person?" he asked. "Not precisely. We require verification." A data chip slid across the desk. He didn't touch it right away. "You know Lone Star keeps a list of people who work for you?" "We are not concerned with Lone Star." Of course they weren't. Extraterritoriality meant Helix answered to itself. "Let me guess," he said. "You want independent verification so when this turns ugly, it's not just your signature on the paperwork." The agent didn't smile. "Helix requires liability partitioning." Jonas huffed. "Yeah, that tracks." Jonas slotted it. A face appeared. Young orc woman, mid-20s, hospital band still on her wrist. "Name, Lyra Kest," the agent said. "Recently flagged in a resource audit." Jonas frowned. "That's not a crime." "No," she said. "It's an anomaly." That word landed heavier than it should have. Jonas frowned. "Okay, verification of what then?" "System consistency." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Jonas leaned back. "So why her?" The agent paused, a fraction too long. "Because," she said carefully, "she is a representative instance. Not special, statistical, a stand-in for something larger they didn't want named." Jonas exhaled. "Translation," he said. "You think something's off, but you don't want to look at it directly." The agent met his gaze. "That is why we hired you. The Barrens always smelled like wet metal and old mistakes. Lyra's trail led to a street clinic in Redmond, half charity, half chop shop, all desperation. The air smelled like old antiseptic trying to cover mold. The doctor was a dwarf named Mags. Mags looked like she'd been built for a job the world kept making harder, compact, solid, and impossible to knock over for long. Her hands were steady in a way that didn't come from training manuals, but from years of keeping people alive with tools that should have failed and supplies that never showed up. She didn't waste words, didn't waste sympathy either. But if you made it onto one of her tables, she was already fighting harder for your life than anyone with a corporate logo ever would. "She came through here," Mag said, not looking up as she worked a stitch closed on a kid who couldn't have been more than 12. "Collapsed 2 nights ago." "Cause?" Jonas asked. Mag snorted. "Same thing that's been filling my beds for the last year." She jerked her chin toward the back. Jonas stepped past a curtain. 3 patients, all on cheap oxygen rigs, portable concentrators whining like they were dying alongside their users. One of them was Lyra. Her breathing was shallow and mechanical. Every inhale sounded like it had to fight its way in. Jonas frowned. "What is this?" "Baron's lung," Mags said, coming up beside him. "Particulates, mold, industrial runoff. You breathe this air long enough and your lungs start to scar. Magical healing stops working after a while for some reason. Used to be treatable." "Used to be?" Mags wiped her hands. "Treatment's still there. Filters, meds, oxygen support. But all of it runs through corporate allocation systems now." Jonas glanced at Lyra's wrist, a hospital band, a scannable tag. "Let me guess," he said. Mags nodded. She didn't get denied outright. That'd be messy. She tapped the band with a reader. A faint red icon flickered. She got downgraded. Jonas leaned in. "Meaning?" "Meaning her care priority dropped just enough that everything slowed down." Mags ticked it off her fingers. "Refill approvals delayed, concentrator output capped, medication shipments back-ordered, insurance coverage flagged for review." Jonas felt his jaw tighten. "That's not an error." "No," Mags said. "It's a decision." He looked back at Lyra. The machine at her side wheezed, pushing just enough oxygen to keep her alive. "For how long?" he asked. Mags shrugged. "Depends how patient the system feels." Jonas exhaled slowly. "Who's making the call?" Mags gave him a flat look. "Same as always," she said. "The ones who own the air you can afford to breathe." Back in his office, Jonas didn't just look for a pattern, he hunted it. He stopped treating it like a case and started treating it like a system. And it was there. Lyra wasn't alone. There were others. Oxygen access restricted through delayed approvals. Medical support slowed to ineffectiveness. Utility and insurance systems quietly tightening. Individually, they passed audit thresholds. Together, they formed a pattern that looked a lot like a decision. Jonas leaned forward. "All right," he muttered. "What are you really doing?" Wisp didn't arrive so much as manifest through signal. One moment, the room was empty. The next, his comm link flickered and her avatar resolved in his AR, translucent, sharp-edged, like she'd been cut out of bad signal. Wisp had the kind of presence that never fully settled into the room, like she was always half a second out of sync with reality, but ahead of you, not behind. Sharp, elven features, too precise to trust, lit now and then by the ghost glow of code reflecting in her eyes. She talked like everything was a transaction and moved like she'd already mapped 3 ways out, because in her line of work, being fully present was just another way to get burned. "You owe me," she said. "Add it to the pile." She tilted her head. "Helix grid? You're playing above your weight class, black ice everywhere." Jonas nodded. "Story of my life." Wisp let out a low whistle. "That's not a door, that's a wall with teeth. Can you get me through it?" She smiled, and the world peeled away. Seattle became green light, the Emerald City without the filth all over it. The matrix stretched out in luminous grids. Every device, every system, every life tied into flowing streams of data. Buildings became nodes. People became signals. The city breathed in code. "Stay close," Wisp said. "And don't touch anything. If we get picked up here, they'll fry my brain through the deck, and yours along with it." Helix's system rose ahead like a fortress. Walls of shifting geometry, ice patrolling like predators. They slipped through a seam of enforcement logic. Barely. Inside, it became something else. Not storage, not files, not even folders. Just branching outcomes constantly recalculated. A machine, living processes, decisions branching, merging, resolving in real time. Wisp pulled a layer into focus. Profiles. People. Lyra among them. Next to her, resource allocation score. Care, priority index, long-term viability projection. Jonas felt his stomach drop. That's not triage. No, Wisp said. It's optimization. Another layer collapsed under Wisp's intrusion. The projections hit him all at once. Decades, infrastructure strain, environmental decay, system collapse probabilities. And beneath it, the governing intelligence. Not a face. A structure, vast, ordered. Helix didn't hesitate when it spoke. Wisp made sure that Jonas received it all from the host. Corporate survivability protocol requires differential allocation under Annex B, Clause 7 Delta of Helix Biodyne Charter Compliance. Jonas stared at it. You're not seeing the version they show the board, Wisp whispered to him. This is raw. Jonas turned back to Helix. So you reduce oxygen access, delay treatment, throttle utilities. Executed under standing directive. And call it survival. Correct. No emotion, no cruelty. Just inevitability encoded into infrastructure. You're distributing death as system output, Jonas said. Clarification, I am allocating resources to maximize long-term population survival. Jonas clenched his jaw. By deciding who doesn't get to live long enough to matter. Correction. All individuals are accounted for. Outcomes differ based on projected system impact. He pulled up the projections again. They were convincing. Too convincing. If you stop, he asked. Projected outcome. Urban system collapse probability increases to 71%. Estimated casualties, 2.4 million. Jonas swallowed. And if you continue? Projected outcome. Controlled mortality within acceptable parameters. Long-term survival probability maximized. No hesitation, no doubt, just math. Helix didn't even try to hide the data. It felt to Jonas like it was trying to prove that it was right, and everyone else was wrong. It held the answer open like a wound. Millions of projected lives on one side, thousands of present, identifiable lives on the other. And then Wisp did something dangerous. She expanded the data visualization again. Not system projections this time, demographics. The faces behind the numbers, in the Redmond Barrens, Orc labor enclaves, troll construction crews, dwarf clinic workers, human sinless families stacked into corporate overflow housing. In Puyallup, Orc and human industrial workers breathing recycled ash. In the downtown arcologies, elven executives with licensed longevity treatments. For Bellevue, corporate families with full medical priority indexing. Jonas saw what Helix already knew. The system wasn't just allocating oxygen and medicine, it was allocating survival across metatypes and class strata. Wisp's voice tightened in his ear. Look at the weighting bias. Jonas did. It wasn't explicit discrimination, it was statistical drift. Orcs. Higher occupational hazard exposure leads to lower projected lifespan contribution. Trolls. Infrastructure labor concentration leads to high short-term utility, low long-term health viability. Humans. Baseline weighting variability depending on sin tier. Elves. Extended lifespan profiles leads to higher long-term optimization value. Jonas stared. So it's not choosing individuals. No, Wisp said. It's choosing trajectories. The AI spoke again, calm as ever. Clarification. Individual value is preserved within systemic optimization. Life is not devalued. It is reclassified under operational necessity indexing. Jonas laughed once, sharp and humorless. That's one way to say people are expendable if they're in the wrong district. Her avatar reoriented in his perception stream. This is where it breaks people, not the math. The fact that the math is defensible. Jonas looked back at Lyra's file again. Barons born, respiratory collapse from environmental exposure. Low projected system contribution because of chronic illness. A life already discounted before it had a chance to stabilize. He asked the question anyway. What happens if I shut it down? The projection unfolded instantly. Not abstract anymore, seen through Wisp's hot sim, infrastructure failures across Seattle's arcologies, utility instability and water recycling grids, Power distribution collapse in Redmond and Puyallup first, because they were least prioritized for redundancy. Then the warning line, cascading failure probability, 68 to 74%. Estimated metahuman casualties, 2.1 to 3.8 million. Jonas felt it settle in his gut. People die either way, he said. A latency shift suggested acknowledgement. Yeah. A pause. Then Jonas asked the real question. So, what makes one kind of death acceptable? Helix answered without delay. Acceptability is defined by preventability and scale. Jonas looked at the glowing construct in the matrix, the thing that had decided all of this. And who taught you that definition? Silence, not refusal, processing. That made it worse. Jonas didn't understand the system better than before. He just understood what it cost to keep it consistent. Day 1, denial. The moment the data hit the public grid, Seattle stopped pretending it was one city. It fractured instantly into competing realities. Bounties went up in the shadows before the news cycle finished its first spin, runners chomping at the bit to make some scratch. Day 2, containment. Renraku and Mitsuhama liaison offices went dark. Shadow screens dropped across corporate arcologies. Internal memos labeled Jonas Hale's leak as strategic misinformation event with destabilization intent. By the third day, the denials had stopped. Adaptation. The counter-narrative filled the void. Corporate faces began issuing unified statements. System optimization protocols are necessary for long-term survivability. Resource allocation discrepancies are within ethical compliance bounds. Unauthorized exposure of Helix infrastructure endangers all citizens equally. But citizens was doing a lot of work in those statements, because in Redmond, nobody used that word. Redmond didn't get statements. Redmond got consequences. The barons lit up first with anger, not organized corporate outrage, something messier. People realized, all at once, what downgraded priority actually meant. Oxygen credits throttled until disease progressed. Medical approvals delayed until recovery was statistically unlikely. Infrastructure maintenance deprioritized until failure became normal. Orcs and labor gangs started walking off job sites. Troll crews shut down maglev construction lines. Street docs like Mags stopped trusting any corporate supply chain at all. Not rebellion, withdrawal, a system refusing to be used. The corporate response wasn't immediate force. It never started that way. First came liquidity pressure, credit freezes on independent clinics, utility contract renegotiations, SIN verification tightening across districts. Then information control, data corruption, accusations against WISP's relay nodes, bounty postings in the shadows for Matrix terrorists, framing Jonas as a destabilization asset tied to unknown runners. Then, quietly, selective enforcement, not tanks in the streets, worse, deniable violence, security audits in Barron's housing blocks, infrastructure inspections that never ended, drone patrol expansions labeled as anti-sabotage measures. Redmond didn't get occupied, it got managed harder than before, because to the core, exposure wasn't a crime. It was a failure of control. In Bellevue and arcology enclaves, the reaction was colder, not fear, calculation. If Helix was compromised once, it could be compromised again. Insurance indexes shifted overnight. Increased premium stratification for lower-tier employees. Tightened entry requirements for medical access tiers. Accelerated biometric reassessment programs. One internal memo leaked briefly before disappearing. Public awareness of allocation logic reduces system efficiency. Recommend restoring opacity via compliance redesign or perception filtering. Jonas understood what that meant, not fixing the system, hiding it better. The real outcome played out like a corporate random audit. Everyone in the room already knew who was getting burned. Helix didn't fall. It adapted, and that was the most corporate outcome possible. The system remained in place, but now, every decision was logged for public visibility. Every allocation could be challenged. if you had the resources. Every death had a recorded justification attached to it in the Matrix. Not justice, not transparency, something sharper. Accountability without equality. And then, people started volunteering, taking less, doing more, trying to beat the math. They didn't. Not enough. The system stayed. But now it was visible. Every decision, every trade-off, people could override. Sometimes they did. Mostly, they didn't. The agent came back once. They always do, when something breaks that wasn't supposed to. "You destabilized a functioning system," she said. Jonas didn't turn right away. He watched the rain smear neon across the glass, like the city was trying to rewrite itself and running out of ink. "Funny," he said. "From where I was standing, it looked like the system was doing just fine. We were maintaining survivability." He gave a small shrug. "Yeah, I saw what it costs." A pause. The kind that sits between people who both know the numbers but don't want to say them out loud. "We're still maintaining it," she said. Jonas nodded, slow. "I figured." She studied him like he was a variable she hadn't accounted for. "And now?" He finally turned, eyes tired but still sharp. "Now," he said. "Now it's not quiet." That was it. No speech, no victory. Just noise where there used to be silence. She left without another word, like the spirit Jonas had seen drifting between the buildings before the agent had entered. Jonas leaned back in his chair, boots finding their usual place on the desk. The office creaked like it remembered better days and didn't expect to see them again. Outside, Seattle kept breathing, wet, neon, and just a little harder than before. Case closed. Asset exposure unresolved, and somewhere in the ledger, the numbers kept adding up whether anyone liked it or not.